All right, thank you all for joining us tonight. This is the third part of a three-part lecture series on AI in the community, in education, and in the workforce. Tonight we're going to focus on the workforce. In addition to some data points that I'll present on, I have Ryan Goellner here with us today. Ryan is the Executive Vice President and Chief Information Officer at Gay City Bank. He'll talk about what's going on with AI in the finance and banking industry, and then that'll be followed up and concluded with a presentation by Tony Ambrose, just talking about getting your data ready, because if you don't have good data sets ready to go into AI, you're not going to get as good a results. And I don't want to steal Tony's thunder, but he'll do a great job. So I'm going to call up a slide deck here that I want to just go through. Just give me a minute. All right. So the title of my presentation, as you see there, is Why AI? But I want to point out that there's not a question mark behind it. This is more of a statement. Why are we going to do AI? So it's not a question, why AI? And I think that's an important distinction. If we look at the signals in the marketplace, it's going to move user screen over a little bit. AI literacy is the fastest growing skill in job markets, and it's broadly expected not just for computer science graduates, but for across the spectrum of the workforce. Look at these data points. By 2030, that's less than 4 years. The information from, I think it was the World Economic Forum, 86% of employers expect AI and information processing to transform their businesses. That's almost 90%, 9 out of 10. 70% of the skills used in most jobs will change. So those are a couple of predictions, but the most important part of that is that it's less than 4 years away now, and that's how big of an upheaval is being predicted. Wait, how do I change? Oh, I know. There we go. AI is already here, in fact. More than half the jobs posted outside of IT and computer science jobs required AI skills, and that was 2 years ago. So 51%, I'm sure, has grown. 3/4 of knowledge workers use generative AI at work already, and almost 80% of AI users bring their own AI to work, which that can be a bit of a risk from a security perspective for your business. This is the most important bullet on this particular slide, I think, and that hiring leaders are increasingly treating AI aptitude as a differentiator. So if you have AI skills, they're estimating a 28% salary premium, or about $18,000 a year. That's how important it is for students who are graduating and entering the work. People entering the workforce need to have some AI skills. And what are those skills? First of all, foundational AI and data literacy. What people have to understand and have responsible use of AI systems in the workforce for competency and effective decision making. But these next two bullets, I think, are even more important, and they have nothing to do with your capability with AI, but evaluating and critically thinking about AI outputs and creating problem solving remains vital for innovation beyond AI capabilities. In other words, soft skills. You have to be able to look at things and critically think about it, and then you have to come up with creative problem solving solutions. That's not AI doing that work. That's a human doing that work, and that's what's going to separate people going forward in terms of work, I think. And then tied to that is human-centric soft skills. Communication, collaboration, empathy, leadership, working together. All of those things are not technical things, but they are vitally important, particularly as we move forward in the age of AI. Some of the tech skills that AI is used for, using for spreadsheets and data analysis. Lots of different things can be done with AI, starting with a draft, taking a draft, revising it, taking an outline, summarizing long materials. Those are all writing communication things. In the software world, coding is a big one. In fact, I think the computer science people are very concerned about what's going to happen with coding and AI. And they've been meeting, there's been a regional group of computer science specialists from Wyoming to the Dakotas, Montana, South Dakota, all getting together over the course of the past school year, talking about, what are we going to do here? Project work, everything from, again, taking meeting notes, creating task lists, consolidating emails, summarizing emails, things like that, all tie back to what some of the things that AI does pretty well. And then just career readiness, whether it's writing a resume, practicing your interviews, creating portfolios, all of those things, AI is very adept at doing that. The other thing that's happening is, people are saying, oh, we're going to lose all these jobs and our jobs are going to go away. Well, that may be true, but there's going to be new jobs and new pathways coming out of the development of AI. So here are some of the jobs that are already out there that people are able to apply for. A responsible AI officer to make sure that there's fairly used and transparent and ethical uses of AI in a business. Policy analyst and regulation specialist, bias auditor and fairness specialist, data annotator, labeling specialist, an AI trainer or a human in the loop specialist. And that's interesting, that last bullet, because we want to do some AI training at Valley City State University, and we've come to the conclusion that there's plenty of content already out there, but we need people that are trained in the ability, kind of a train the trainer mentality to be able to go out and deliver the content. So we're experiencing that firsthand. And then the last slide here are some suggested graduation skills. If you're a student in the realm, or you're thinking about getting into the workforce, some of the skills that you're going to need is know how to use AI ethically and transparently. You have to validate what you're getting for outputs and be able to cite those sources appropriately. Apply AI to domain problems with disciplined standards. Protect your sensitive data, understanding your data and privacy, and then to be able to collaborate effectively, those soft skills. It's going to be human plus AI plus teams. So those are really what's going on in the market, the job market right now. I don't know, does anybody have any questions? Otherwise, I'll just break down from the slides. No questions. Great. Well, next then we'll turn it over to Ryan Goellner. As I said, Ryan is the Executive Vice President and CIO for Gate City Bank. And thanks for joining us, Ryan, and look forward to your presentation.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Can you see my slide?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, so what we're going to discuss today is really how Gate City Bank is using AI and actually even thinking about it as we continue down this adventure. So kind of a starting point on our thoughts on AI, and this is the discussion that we actually have talked to our team members as well, is right now we're thinking as just another productivity tool, right? As we're going into AI, we're not replacing any of our jobs with it. And right now we're really big in our RPA, and we feel at this point the AI is just another tool to help create efficiencies within our area. And as Jerry talked about it, one of the things is that we want our team members to actually stay accountable for the decisions. So there's no, right now, the things that we're creating, there's no automated decision making. We actually have that human in the loop for everything that we're doing with the AI. And everything that we're doing right now is internal first. So we're making sure the AI that we're using is just right now helping our team members. There's nothing that we're doing that is actually getting pushed out to our customers. We feel it's important for, as a bank, that we have a good understanding on how it's used internally before we even think about doing anything for AI with our customers. The first thing as we've gone through this is, what guardrails do we need to have in place to be successful in AI? So the first thing that we did is we actually set up a formal AI policy and then also an AI charter. I think those were the two things that we felt that we needed to have in place to be successful, to move with creating AI agents and things like that. And what we did is we actually created like 3 gates. And so what we're trying to do is we have certain, I would say, AI initiatives that are low risk, and then we have other AI initiatives that are probably more riskier to the bank. But what we make sure that we have in all of those is our, our technology team, our risk team, our compliance team, so that they're all involved at the beginning and they're not waiting till the end after we decide we want to go live with something and all of a sudden they're putting a stop to it. So we're actually having all of those areas together, so to help move these AI initiatives. And then every AI case is approved before it actually even goes into testing. So what we've actually done is we've created, I'd say, an AI intake form. They kind of go through, okay, what the problem they're trying to solve, because that's the most important thing. We just don't want to put AI just to have AI. So what are they trying to solve? Is it part of our strategic initiative? What's the ROI of that? So they actually have to really think about it before they're actually even coming in for the approval. And so then we have an AI subcommittee that actually takes a look at that, evaluates it, and then this committee then actually decides, hey, we think this is only be a gate 1. We don't need to have a full project on it. Or we'll say, you know what, this is a full project. We want a PM on the implementation. And then we would say, hey, this needs to go to a gate 2, gate 3. And so what the gate 2, gate 3 is the gate 2 is where they're actually building the AI, and that gate 3 is they're actually coming back to the tech steering committee and actually showing the work that they did and the KPIs with it. So then we can make the decision, yes, let's move ahead, and you can actually put this AI in production. Right now, we feel this is kind of the best way to actually have these guardrails in on with the AI building. This here just kind of talks about the like scaling reviews, the low risk, medium risk, and kind of the high risk, as I talked about earlier. So our first internal example of how we actually used is what we call it's a PAL line. So it's a personal assistant line. And what this is so right now, our frontline team members at the offices, we have tons of policies, procedures. And a lot of times when they have a customer in front of them, if they don't know the answer, well, they can't expect them to sit there and try to run through all the procedures. So what they'll do then is call in back into the operational team and try to get the answers to those. And so what we built is really a chatbot that's actually looking at those specific policies and procedures for those team members. So that actually gives them the ability to ask the question to that chatbot and gives them the answer. And then what we're also doing then is specific calling out where it is in that procedure. So then, because as I showed on the next slide, we put in what procedures we're pulling the information from, but then we're also actually giving exactly where it is at in the procedure. So what is the PAL line does? It recognizes the intent. It's going to actually route the question to the right AI agent, because we actually built an agent for each one of we call the PAL line. So there's 9 different options on that. So we have an agent for each one. So it's going to route it to the right agent, and then it provides the consistent and approved guidance for our team members. Why we felt this was a good use case, ensures the team members gets the accurate answers, because these are our internal policies and procedures. Reduces the interruption to the back office, because one of the things is the back office, they have to do their everyday jobs. And so on top of that, then they're getting interrupted by the questions from our front line. And they're just really keeping that knowledge current for our team members. Because one of the things, as well as a customer's coming in, or there's might be an issue, and it might be once a year that they have to handle that. well, they're not going to remember it. So then this gives them that opportunity to be able to get those answers quickly to them. So this here is an example of the agent that we've created. So this is the question on there is, how do I print my school spirit card? So what that is that at Gate City Bank, we print out cards for schools, universities, things like that. And so that was the question that was asked. And then the PAL agent gave the answer on how to do it. And then if you see down below here, it actually gives the source of where it's pulling the information. So then that team member actually then knows exactly where it's pulling from, and it's not, anything that was just made up. So we're always giving to the source to that team member. So if they do question it, they can still actually have a chance to go into that documentation to validate the accuracy. So what we've learned so far when we created this agent is when people understand AI, what it can and cannot do, they adopt it more confidentially. Because one of the things that we feel is there's always this maybe mistrust of the information that's coming back. And so what we want to make sure is what we're doing is that validation with our team members. The guardrails, I think the governance is important. As I talked about earlier, during this project, we have our compliance team in there. We have the risk team in there. We have the security team. We have our frontline team members in there. So it's not just IT driving this. It's actually coming from all departments. And I think that's very important as well, that when we're looking at this, it's not IT driven. It's a bank driven, or it's a company driven project. And then change management, that's also important. It's, as you look at the human side of AI, like the slide says, it's really more, it matters more than actually on the technical side. Any questions before I go into the next piece on how we're using it on how we use it on what I call our Pauline chatbot? Okay. So
I don't have a question, Ryan, but just a statement. The NDUS, it's interesting. The NDUS did a similar thing. We created an AI tool that looks at all the policies and procedures, not only at the university system level, but incorporated century code, the North Dakota State Constitution. So if you go in and have a policy related question, it pulls it a lot faster than if you were to try and do the research.
Yeah. And I think what we're also looking at on that piece there is looking through our policies and or procedures, specifically policies, and having it actually point to like the FFIC handbooks, our regulatory handbooks, and actually give us guidance if does this policy follow regulatory guidance. So that's also something that we're working on as an agent. On this other use case that we've had is we've actually created an agent for our marketing team. So what this agent does is actually looking at our internal content, and it's also then looking at our website. And what that's actually doing then, that agent knows on what we've created and what we're actually maybe wanting to create. So it's actually using the information that we have to create a new content for either our website or Facebook or wherever we want to post. Now with that, let me go to the next one. There we have the controls built in place on that as well, right? So we're just not creating this content and pushing it out. It's not autonomous. We also always have our marketing team review it. And then we also have a compliance review as we send any marketing material out. And once again, it's only using the content that we have. So it's not actually, the agent's not going anywhere outside. It's just using what we've already created. So that's a second use case that we've actually used for the AI agents. The last one I'll talk about, and I know, Jerry, you kind of talked about this, is really on the AI assistance in coding. Some of the things that we've done here with our, specifically, our BI team and our RPA team is there might be a lot of different coding out there, or how we're using it, Python, Java. And instead of us trying to figure out on if we're trying to create something within our data warehouse or BI team and trying to figure out on how to bring it over from this code over to this other one, we've actually been able to use Copilot to help create that for us. And that has created, I'd say, a huge efficiency, specifically within our BI team. The last couple of things that I don't have on the slide that we are actually using it for as well, and just to let this team here know, is really we're also looking at it as an efficiency standpoint. So some of the things that we've actually done within our team is we've actually taken some of the procedures that we do and we've dumped it into Copilot. And what we've done then is said, okay, these are all the different tools that we have in place. Is there a more efficient way for us to do this process? And so then what we've been able to do is with AIs come back and say, yes, you should be able to do X, Y, and Z instead of actually, taking some data and manually inputting it in. So it's been helping us out on that way. Is just kind of going back and re-reviewing on what we've actually have implemented and see if there's a more efficient way for us. What we're not doing, like I talked about, there's nothing customer facing right now on the AI. Not saying we'll never do that, but that's not where our use case is right now. Where there's no public tools with the bank data, and we're not doing any autonomous decision making at this time. We feel that's a very high risk for us. So, practical view of AI. As what we've learned is start with internal use cases. I think that's very important, is what you can do internally within your area. Governance is important. I think if you just go through and just start putting an AI without governance in the long run, I think it'll cause more issues than being helpful. And then just scale responsibility. And I think, Jerry, as you talked about it as well, one of the things that we've done in this area is we had our RPA team, and then we had an Office 365 admin group. And from there, there was, I think, a gap on, okay, which tool should we be using? So we are combining it into one area to like an AI automation engineering group. That way, the governance and everything is all in one. We're following the same process, the same procedure, and we're using the best tool that's available for us to create that efficiency within the bank. The last thing I do want to state is here at the bank, and I don't know if any of this group here has read it, we've done a book club called The AI Driven Leader. I think it's a very good book to read. And really, it helps you think of using AI as like a thought partner as you go through. And it's something that we've read, and right now we're just doing a book club that I'm leading with all of our leaders, and kind of going through is how can we use AI not just as a tools to create efficiencies throughout, but how can we actually use AI as a thought leader in your organization. So that's what I have. So I'll open up to any questions. You're on mute, Jerry.
Sorry about that. So I have a couple of questions if no one else wants to jump in. The thing that we're kind of up against with higher ed, and particularly, is training people to go train others on the use of AI. How are you handling the training aspect of getting people acclimated and acquainted with AI, or how is that evolving?
So we're doing a couple of things. So we've done several videos on it using AI actually to create these videos. So also internally, we use Viva Engage, and I don't know if the team here knows what that is. It's really, I would call it an internal Facebook. And so we are actually pushing out a lot of content. So we'll do like weekly tidbits, and we want actually all of their team members to engage and there's like, hey, I used AI this way, this helped me out, is really having that team member community. Because I think once team members see how other people use it, they will probably get more comfortable. So those are kind of the two biggest things is what we're trying to do to push out. And I think it helps out too with myself and the leaders getting together and actually talking about it and listening on how those leaders are actually talking about AI with their team. And that actually gives good use cases then, as when other leaders go back and talk to their team members during their weekly meetings, they can actually push them and give them ideas on how they can use AI.
Kind of sort of related to that, and I know higher education is a different beast than probably business and industry, but in higher education, we got the complete spectrum of those who are just cutting edge out in front. We don't have to worry about them. They're going to figure it out. And then across the spectrum, you get to the back end, you got kind of, they're called the laggards in research, but and some that are just not even willing to take up AI. They're against it for personal reasons. Now, in the faculty world, your classroom is your space, so you can decide how you want to use AI or you don't want to use AI. We really can't dictate those terms. Do you have a spectrum of people like that? This is where I'm leading up to my question. Is there a spectrum of users that are way out in front, don't have to worry about them, and then you got those that are just going to not want to do it? And how, from a business perspective, we pretty much let the faculty do what they have to do, but is there a different engagement in your private business, or how do you handle that spectrum?
Yeah, I think there is. I think we have some leaders that, kind of like you talked about, that more in the forefront, and they're all in on using it, and you have some that are a little reluctant on it. Now, I would say, as we continue down this path, I think that people that don't use it will fall behind. And I think that's the unfortunate case on it. And so I think that people that do use it will probably be more successful in their jobs than the ones that don't use it.
So they'll self-select.
Yep.
Anybody else have any questions for Ryan? I don't want to monopolize. All right, we'll take another opportunity at the end here to take questions, but we'll move it over to Tony Ambrose. Tony is a business consultant. He runs his own enterprise, his own business, and he's the president of TechND. I should have made that statement right off the top. TechND is an organization, a nonprofit in the state that's there to help develop and assist the development of technology and AI in the state. And they are a co-sponsor of this event. And I should have mentioned that at the outset. I forgot. But Tony is here tonight to finish the series, and I'll just turn it over to you, Tony.
Right on. Thank you, Jerry. And I'm going to take a little bit of a left turn from what I originally wanted to talk about. I originally wanted to talk a lot about, hey, let's organize our data and let's make sure that we're ready for AI in our workplace. And then the more I started preparing, the more I was taking stock of the situations I run to in public sector, private sector, and really just my own thoughts on where AI really fits in. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the human aspect of this, AI in the workplace. And I think there's a lot of common theming between what Jerry said and a lot of what Ryan said. And I'm hoping we can pull it all together. When we talk about AI in the workplace, probably the first thing to get over is the fact that it's already here. This isn't a, put a flashlight under your chin and talk about the year 2000 kind of thing. This is happening now. It's here. It's working its way into what we do. Any kind of modern tooling that you're using, whether it's Microsoft 365 or Google's Office suite, or even, some of the ERP systems we use, the data systems we use, the reporting systems we use, whether it's out in front or it's somewhere behind the scenes, AI is already injecting itself into our work stream, whether we want it, like it or not. And it's a matter of just understanding that this is a disruptive thing, no different than the disruption that happened way back in the day when Google allowed us to search something called the internet instead of using Yahoo, which was a big organized directory. No different than some of the other disruptors we've seen in our workplace over the years. So it's already here. Probably the next thing to consider is AI especially the generative AI and the things that we think of first typically when we're thinking about AI in the workplace is like a chat GPT or a Copilot or something like that. It's overly optimistic. It really likes patting you on the back for coming up with a really cool question. It's really smiley, and I think that's intentional on the part of the folks that create some of the and algorithms that help it reply to you. Is it tries to make sure that as it's replying to you, that it's not coming off as, well, I'm so much smarter or I'm doing something else. It's going to give you a nice little compliment up front, like, oh, hey, that's a really cool question, and or that's a really great idea. Sometimes when it's not. An example I've got using this, I do like to cook, and every once in a while I'll throw Copilot a question. Maybe I'm out of olive oil and I'm looking for a different similar oil that I can use in my cooking. And every once in a while I'll just get kind of snarky with it, and I'm out of olive oil, but I do have some 0W20 out in my garage. And Copilot was really smiley about it. It complimented me for my creativity and said, absolutely, that will not allow your food to stick to the pan. I'm like, okay, fantastic. You're completely missing the point. So it's overly optimistic. It's randomly incorrect. And I say that because you're not always sure when it's correct or when it's incorrect. And it's not always correct when you think it should be. So you're not quite sure when it's 100% right, but it is relentlessly confident. It is going to be absolutely dead certain that the response that it's giving you is 100% dead on. And only when you push back and say, you know what, probably a synthetic blend oil is not a good plan for putting in my spaghetti sauce. Oh, yeah, you're right. How did I miss that? I'm glad that you caught that. Perhaps we should stick to oils that are actually human edible. Hey, right. At the end of the day, though, I mean, it's coming back with things that I can do. It's coming back with answers. It's coming back with theories that, boy, it's going to stand by. Is AI or these generative AI tools, are they accountable in and of themselves? I mean, what are you going to do when something goes sideways? Well, I asked Copilot and it told me this. So clearly I'm out of the picture when it comes to being accountable for the decision that just got made. That's not quite how things work. So as we look at, it's in the workplace, it's here, it has tremendous, tremendous capability, tremendous promise, but also tremendous flaws. It brings me back to the old Jurassic Park. Here we are. We've got things that it can do, but at the end of the day, are there things that it should do and should not do? So started thinking about it, then I've seen things broken out like this before. Okay, there's maybe 3 categories of work tasks where we can talk about AI and how it should be used in the workplace. And, first category is tasks that AI can and within reason should be able to do without human assistance. These are things that we can automate. These are things that it can do. We don't necessarily have to touch it every time. That's one category. The second category is things that AI should do with human assistance and only with human assistance. And then there's a third category where I'm going to go ahead and label out some things that I think AI should not do. These are things that we should not use AI for, even though it can. I don't know that we should. So let's start with the first category of things that AI should do without human assistance. And I've got stars by a bunch of these because there's some caveats. So a task that AI should be able to do without human assistance is stuff that's repetitive, highly rules-based, maybe some pre-processing, and then again, it hands off afterwards. If there's a task that's low risk enough where if an error occurs, it's not going to be catastrophic, and things that are easy to audit and easy to reverse. Those would be the types of tasks. And I starred the first two because at the end of the day, repetitive tasks and rules-based tasks, that requires a lot more effort on our part going into those to define them well than most people are ready for when they start to think about how can I have AI do this for me, or how can I use these tools to automate this. We often fall down on one of the core tenets of that, and that's making sure that you understand exactly what the process is and can describe it well enough, along with the boundaries and along with the yeah buts, so that we can automate. Why does this work? Well, ultimately, this should give us humans time, more time for higher value tasks. Again, assuming that we've done a good job of defining and assuming that we've done a good job of implementing, we should be able to reduce cost and reduce error rates. Again, also assuming that it's the appropriate task. And it works because in this case, accountability remains clear. It has to be. And I got in gray at the bottom, something that's fully automated doesn't mean zero human oversight. We can't just turn it loose and expect it to run every day, set it and forget it, and never look and never audit and never go back and say, hey, okay, here's what I expected to happen. Here's what's actually happening. And Ryan talked a lot about guardrails. Have to have some sort of early warning system if something's going off the rails, or if something is, where there's a process that's continually not going the way it should, even though you had rules defined, you had rules in place. Maybe there's just something that the tool is misinterpreting and sending you down a wrong path. So again, that's that audit trail. And again, when we hit that, it's got to be pretty noisy about it, where it's alerting the right people. And ultimately, it's got to be something that you can go back in and fix. So I've got some examples down the middle, routine
Hey, Tony?
calculations. Go ahead. Yeah,
I
fire.
could have interrupted you sooner. Are we supposed to be seeing slides?
Oh, my goodness. Yes.
So
And if you're
should have
not,
said something sooner, but you were just going, and I was
fantastic.
like,
I was going. Yeah, you missed out on my. Okay. Yeah. Awesome slides. My bad. Thank you.
yep.
All right. So I did want to make sure I called out I do have the appropriate slide from Jurassic Park. I wasn't just spinning off the top of my head. All right. So sorry about that, guys. Yeah. So again, without human assistance, these are the things that we should be looking for in our tasks, and these are why they're good. So maybe let's fly into tasks that AI should do with human assistance. And so these are tasks where there's some ambiguity, perhaps, in what the task is or what the process is behind the task, where there's context that needs to be provided surrounding what that task is, that isn't necessarily predictable. Anything where judgment's required, anything where you need clear accountability and responsibility. And then obviously, if there's some sort of ethical or reputational risk, this has to involve humans. This can't be something you just turn over and automate. So this type of task works because we can focus our effort more on the decisions that have to be made and the judgment that we have to apply and ethics that we have to inject, and less on just pure processing of what these things are. And ultimately, humans have to remain responsible and accountable for the result. I would think that this kind of task is where the highest value prop is right now for AI, but it's also ones that, these are tasks that ultimately we need to be the most careful with. You could make the argument that the ones that are being done without human assistance or even you need to have more care taken. And I would absolutely agree with that, and that you have to prep a lot more up front. But again, my premise would be that those are going to be lower risk tasks to start with and lower effort that the AI actually has to do overall. This one, we're asking it to be our partner. We're asking it to be side by side with us and ultimately inform the decisions that we need to make. So again, the AI can inform the decisions, we need to perform the decisions, and we need to own the result. So things like this, and again, this is a lot of what we see folks using like a ChatGPT or a Copilot for. It's drafting things, ideation, summarizing. I would put code generation in here. Any kind of operational planning, legal document review, all of these things are things that the AI can assist us in these tasks. If we turn things over and we're 100% vibe coding, for example, and boy, I just asked it to do something and it produced some code and I ran it once and it worked, so I went ahead and published it. Boy, that's going to be a big mistake at some point down the road. These are things where, yes, it can do those things for us, but we still need to apply as humans. We still need to apply our domain expertise, our subject matter expertise, and have this conversation with the tool to come back with adjustments and iterate so that ultimately we can get to a spot. But again, that's where we as humans are injecting what we know and what we can do, and that's how we become responsible and accountable for the result. We're not going to let that be the solution until we've had our say. And so, what Ryan's talking about, working on the processes he's looking at the bank, I mean, it's very clear from jump that Ryan and Gate City were very, very deliberate about making sure that this isn't something we're just setting it off and letting it run. We're doing things with human assistance, or we're looking for this to take care of things that ultimately allow humans to do what we do better. But it's not something that we're just turning it loose, and certainly not turning it loose on our customers without some sort of human interaction. So maybe the third category here, tasks AI shouldn't do. And the characteristics on these, I mean, anything that could result in irreversible harm, that one seems pretty obvious. I mean, a lot of these seem pretty obvious, but moral judgment somehow has an effect on human dignity, legal responsibility. Why not? AI lacks that true understanding. It lacks that empathy. It lacks that human component, and it doesn't have moral agency. It can look like it does, but at the end of the day, it does not. It is using an algorithm behind the scenes. It may or may not end up in the right spot. It has bias, and that bias is difficult to look at. It's difficult to find, and it's even more difficult to correct. And at the end of the day, for these types of things, there's the accountability, it becomes unclear, or it's not even there to begin with. And there's drastic repercussions to that. So I put a few of these examples on there. And again, I starred some of those because I think these are examples of things where AI shouldn't do those things independently, but they can certainly, AI can be a part of that process as long as it's doing very clear guidelines on here's the part that AI is going to assist with, and then there's going to be a human taking over and doing something. I see a lot of AI being used for HR tasks, for example, where, pretty much the job application process sometimes look like my AI is going to talk to your AI and we'll see if we get a match. I think some organizations I've seen actually take it a little too far, where they're going through almost all of the hiring process, either through a chatbot or through, it's more than just reviewing the resume. It's more than just assessing skills. It's more than, lining up simple questions and answers and doing a written interview. I've seen somewhere, again, it's a chat interview, which absolutely blew my mind. But then basically making that hiring decision right there and not even passing it along to a human to review results. Stuff like this, again, AI just can't be there at this point. It shouldn't ever be that final authority on tasks like this. And honestly, I don't think it should ever be the final authority on any task. It's got to be something, it's got to be used in a way where humans are still part of the process. And again, I know, Ryan, you did a really nice job of laying that out. It's not complete automation, and it's not, but at the same time, it's not completely not relevant to the job. It's got to be part in there. So in summary, what are the skills that we need to be looking for, and what are the skills that we need to have as we're approaching jobs in this age of AI? AI literacy is at the bottom, and Jerry did a really nice job of defining what that is up front and making sure, what do we mean by AI literacy? It means that we have that ability, to know how, at least at a big picture level, how AI works, what the limitations are, what the concerns might be, and how to collaborate with it effectively, how to create a good prompt, how to iterate, how to validate. But doing any of that takes that critical thinking and judgment. It takes some emotional intelligence to know whether, okay, is what I'm being told, or is what the AI presented to me as a potential solution, does that solve the problem? Is that getting communicated in the right way? Is that, is that really what I want representing me / my organization / my group to the rest of the world? We need to be able to define problems well and frame problems well. And that kind of goes back to the first category of things where, my goodness, if we're automating things and having AI do most of the lifting, if we do a poor job with problem definition and we're not framing things well, and we're not building in our subject matter expertise, and we're not reviewing it, and we don't have any way to watch it, we're just setting ourselves up for trouble. So we also have to have the adaptability and the ethical reasoning and accountability that we bring to the table. We have to be able to learn and be agile and continue as the tools get closer and closer and closer to replicating what, at least we believe, how humans think, and the reasoning process and the judgment and all of that. We need to be able to adapt and make sure we're still injecting the right skills that we're bringing to the table. And finally, again, is this a case of, will AI replace workers? Will AI replace jobs? I don't know if that's the right question. I would ask, which tasks in the workplace should AI automate or replace, or at least partially replace? Which tasks should AI assist? And then ultimately, which tasks must remain with humans? And with that, let's field questions. I know there was one that came in the chat here. Melissa, you said AI, I mentioned AI had biases. What type of biases are most prevalent? And how do we frame our requests to lessen chances of bias? Great question. And when I'm thinking of biases in AI, a lot of those biases come down to and let's just start with generative AI based on a large language model. What material was used, and what patterns and practices were used to train that AI? Was it subjected to a broad set of varying viewpoints that were weighted equally or weighted differently? The types of biases that I think are most prevalent that I've run into, I think in general, the obvious ones that we tend to think about are fairly quickly rooted out and weeded out in terms of like race bias and gender bias, and some that you're going to look at and go, well, that's clearly not I think the biases that exist and they're most prevalent are a lot more subtle. Just starting with an over confidence in certain subject matters or certain subject matter experts or certain sources of authority. If AI doesn't always do a great job of weeding out Tony's opinion versus someone who's the top in their field expert opinion versus mass opinion. I don't know if I'm explaining that really well, and hopefully somebody can help me out here. But at the end of the day, I think the biggest bias I see is, again, that lack of ability to adequately frame its sources. And ultimately, the result that you get or the answer that you get based on the information that's been fed in to that language model and what it's been trained on sometimes yields the wrong result in very subtle ways. It's not obviously wrong. Go ahead. Is there somebody talking?
Yeah, this is Jerry. I was just going to jump in and, if it's kind of come back to your comparison, if I'm asking you, who do you think is going to win the World Series, and you answer, I can frame your answer because I know who you are and I know your background and experience. And if I ask, somebody else that's really smart about baseball and World Series, not saying you're not, you frame your answer, you hear the answer back, and then you understand from where that's coming from. When we use AI, we don't know where this answer is coming from, so we can't determine what biases even went into that decision. And I think that's the part that's so so foggish, and you just don't know what it is, where this is coming from.
Right.
So
Well,
I'd
yeah,
like,
Jerry,
I
you'd
give it
asked
like a
me.
real life
Go ahead.
example.
Yeah.
So we talked about real life example. So Amazon's, and you talk about the AI recruitment. So Amazon's AI recruitment tool penalized resumes containing female related terms because most of the resumes they put in to train it on were male. So that then created a bias because what they were looking at more was then on the male dominated resumes. And so that was a bias that was put on there because of how it was trained.
Right on. Yeah. Great example, Ryan. And I think, as we start looking at using this in our workplaces, especially as we're able to go in and, again, we've got this tool that's been trained on this information here. It learns more how to dissect information and organize it and ultimately disseminate it. And then you point it to your information within your organization. And Ryan, that's what you did with some of your marketing, and then some of your, Jerry, you talked about the university system pointing this to century code and pointing it to policies and procedures and all of that. Some of those things are, that body of detail, especially century code. I mean, it is what it is, right? It's not necessarily going to be biased one way or the other unnecessarily. It's not opinion. It's basically, this is what the law is. Now, if I'm taking that if I'm taking that same tool and I'm pointing it to my business's information, and I haven't done a good enough job of vetting what's in that body of information that I'm feeding it in order to learn and base its reasoning on. And again, if I haven't gone in and separated the sources of authority from, Tony's opinions, from perhaps something a little bit more innocuous, like maybe somebody slipped a draft in there and it got published accidentally. Now all of a sudden, you've got a body of information that's not authoritative. It's not completely without, you're injecting bias in without necessarily knowing it, and it's going to reflect that bias in its responses. So hopefully I answered the question there. I think we did all right. How do I frame my request to lessen chances of bias? Honestly, the biggest thing I've done is I've just made sure I've iterated repeatedly and gone back and asked follow-up questions. Are you sure it's not this? Or what about this? And why did you say, why did you suggest this? And that's where the human reasoning comes in, because you're going to get a whole bunch of different responses. And if you redirect the tool slightly to say, okay, well, I hear you there, but what about this? It's going to come back with a whole different, perhaps, set of information. And then it's up to me to kind of reason in between and then point out, hey, A versus B and all of that kind of thing. But so again, it's not a question. It's not like a Google search where you're going in and just doing a search once and then bang, it's on the first page and I click and I go. It literally, with generative tools anyway, it has to be that conversation back and forth. You have to iterate and refine. And again, I think the practice I've used is more, okay, I'm going to iterate, but I'm also going to iterate from multiple points of view and ask questions from, make sure I'm asking about something that I'm not looking for, just to make sure that I understand what it's bringing back and hopefully compare. So hopefully that helps. Lance, you had a question. I'm not going to read that, man. You want to ask it?
I mean, well, go ahead, Jerry, if you want to read it.
I was just going to say we're getting toward the end of our time.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe you could take it offline with Lance. I've got another 7:00 appointment that I got to
fair
connect
enough.
to. So
yeah, my bad.
This was only somewhat related, so that's perfect.
Okay, I will follow up with Lance. Any other short questions? Otherwise, I just want to say thanks for the time and sorry about missing out on my awesome slides up front.
Yeah, and I want to thank both Ryan and Tony for their presentations today, and obviously a big thank you to TechND for its collaboration and sponsorship of this program. It was a good 3 weeks, a lot of good information out there, and I appreciate those of you that have returned for all three of them. So have a good rest of your evening. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.